Welcome to Phazon Labs, powered by World 1-1 Podcast, and sponsored by absolutely nobody, but it could be sponsored by you. If this is your jam, you should have your pod people call our pod people, and we'll do pod people lunch. I am, as always, your host, Larry the Bearded Wonder. Joining me this evening is my partner in crime, Isabel Bramman.
Hello.
And joining Phazon Labs for the first time, but definitely not the last, Mykell Morphball Mishap Brown.
Too fat to fit into a morph ball.
You just kind of expand a little until you're perfectly spherical and roll around full size.
I look like a gray version of the blueberry thing from Willy Wonka.
We'll paint some orange and yellow on there for you. So real quick, Mykell, you want to introduce yourself since you're new to this show, but not us as a family?
Not particularly. I'm not important enough to remember.
So, Mykell is part of the World 1-1 family and has been for close to a year and a half now, if I recall. But he will be joining us going forward for Phazon Labs. He's one of my oldest Metroid compatriots, actually. So, we kind of go way the hell back, and we're hoping that we keep going way the hell forward. So, but this week, let's dig in with our pitch of the week, which is one that Mykell and I have in chat probably over the last 12 months kind of toyed with the idea and had some fun knocking around. So I would love to roll into a Metroid game where we're starting fully powered, and the difficulty curve comes from the fact that the further we're playing and the deeper we get into whatever the setting is, I'm not even feeling picky about the setting. This whole idea for me is just kind of all about the baseline mechanic of decay. Is that the further we get in, an aged Samus with, an old suit that's barely hanging in there starts malfunctioning more and more, and you're losing your abilities from full power down to next to nothing the further and deeper you get into this. And so instead of powering up, you have to now find new ways to work with less and less in order to progress and eventually make your way through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm picturing, going up against a phenomenal, ending boss fight with not much more than a pea shooter, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's kind of my baseline thought. So I'm going to toss it out there for the group to play with and see if we've got any ideas we maybe want to wrap this concept in.
What about the concept of, your stuff's malfunctioning, your powers start... You end up eventually having to cobble together random stuff that you can find to... And I'm not talking like... I forget what that game... What was that game where you played in the mall against the zombies?
Oh, Dead Rising.
Yeah, I'm not talking like that, but I'm talking like she has to basically improvise with various things that she finds.
Mm-hmm.
Behind this.
Or like... It'd be interesting just the concept to see her have to pick up other weaponry that's not able to be integrated into the suit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just think something like that could be interesting.
Yeah.
Or her have to figure out a way to make it to where the suit can use it, even though it's clunky and unwieldy.
Yeah, I'm almost like picturing, like the idea of the arm cannon malfunctions, so she just rips off the arm cannon and she now has two arms, so she can use both her hands to use the improvised weapons and stuff like that. That would be an interesting take on that. And then we get into more melee combat instead of the ranged shooter combat.
Almost like the first thing that she finds would be just a pipe or something, and that's her weapon for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I dig this. It would definitely change a lot of the feel too, in that you'd be a lot more close range hand-to-hand combat than ranged.
Not that fucking melee counter.
I don't know. I'm still curious to see how if it's maybe been balanced out a little better with Dread, but we'll know in about a week. So.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it is really that soon, isn't it?
Yeah. We got less than 2 weeks, man. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking like to go with like a gameplay style, like a first person kind of perspective. And then as you like pick up various items, you would be able to, kind of like experiment and that kind of thing. Like maybe like you combine 2 kind of items and then you'd be able to, like the pipe and like maybe like a flamethrower or something like that, and suddenly you have a flaming, like club or whatever. That'd be like an interesting concept. I'm thinking. So, yeah.
I could definitely see like some real primitive workbench sections to, play with pulling stuff apart and putting it back together in new arrangements and try and get different functions and attributes out of some of the stuff you picked up.
You can almost build your weapons similar to how Biomutant was. Because Biomutant, pretty much anything you find, you could shove into a weapon somehow.
Yeah. I'm almost thinking like the newer Resident Evil games, like had more, well, not like the creative weapons, but like the idea that it's more like the kind of like tense because you don't have enough ammo, so you kind of have to be creative with like your melee weapons and like how you approach different obstacles and things like that as well. So that might be also. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it just popped in my head. Part of me is thinking too that I don't know if I'd want to go first person, because I'm kind of liking the idea of asymmetrical parts of her suit are just kind of coming apart and falling off. Like maybe she's, we're rocking the Varia suit with the shoulder buffs, but like one of the shoulder buffs is basically falling off and crumbled. Part of the chest plate's falling off and it's just exposed wiring underneath and everything. Like I want that good visual decay.
I can almost see this playing similar to the game Rad.
Okay.
Like, it was kind of an overhead, almost isometric view. The game was mostly melee focused, but it had a very cobbled together feel to it. And honestly, in something like this, I don't know how you would make it work, but because Rad is actually a roguelike, something like that would work very well for this if you could figure out a way to make it make sense storyline wise.
Yeah, I'm actually, now that you mentioned the isometric, I'm almost thinking of the Supergiant games.
Yeah.
Because those are isometric, and a lot of them have like the more roguelike elements. And the one that I've played, I played a little bit of Bastion, and that one has a lot of like creative weapons and a really interesting story from what I've seen so far, with that's kind of like destroyed world and stuff. So maybe that could be like an interesting idea that Samus kind of, has to deal with not only her suit falling apart, but the world is kind of crumbling around her as well. So,
you know what would have a good baseline aesthetic for that? And Mykell, I'm surprised you haven't popped in with this yet too, because I played it on your recommendation. I'm thinking Hob.
Yes. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Because I mean, you get so many of those sections that kind of, come up and move and change and shift with all the gear work and everything. Lots of stonework, like overgrown, vine stonework and everything. I think there's a real potential, and it's layered too. So I mean, you have, that idea of you've got the overhead, but you're working in layers where you can actually go deeper and deeper too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I do like that. that they can go like kind of maybe like even like a like shift your view maybe to be able to go around.
So I'm thinking our crux here could very well be that, you know, Samus is like I said, I kind of want to see an aged Samus that's kind of losing the touch and the reaction time. Is, you know, she's gotten older and just kind of worn down over decades of doing this. And this kind of heads towards a final mission. Maybe it's she picks up a beacon for a Chozo resting ground somewhere, and she's basically looking for somewhere to, you know, lay down and pass off in the elephant graveyard, so to speak. And as, you know, everything's kind of falling apart, and she's, you know, cobbling everything together just to try and get to that last place to, you know, go back to the people that picked her up, saved her, and raised her. I think would be a really kind of melancholy overhang for that type of story and that visual. And she's really just kind of fighting her way through all just the natural
aging process.
Well, not just that, the native inhabitants of said planet, you know, the joke, you know, that they had settled and found that place is, you know, essentially, like I said, their elephant graveyard, but none of them had, you know, been there in so long that everything had kind of overgrown, and it's now an ordeal for her to try and get there. And, you know, 30, 40 years ago, this wouldn't have been an issue for her, but, you know, we're kind of way down the line and everything's falling apart, and she's not what she once was. I think it'd put a neat spin on it.
Yeah.
What about the concept of something like, you know, in what you're saying here, she realizes that she's approaching an end. So almost like she takes on an apprentice or something like that to pass off what she has. So that way, like, it's still useful to somebody. It would almost be a way to make the game 2-player.
Ooh, I like that idea. Co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Like, and especially the concept that, like, Samus's powers are waning, where the apprentice is just young. So both of them have roughly a similar power level, but they both would use it almost entirely differently.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, the apprentice would be, like, faster.
Yeah.
And like Samus would be more of like a tank. So she would be slower, but she could take more hits. So
interesting thought.
Yeah. No, I do like
and
this.
And then once you know, we get to end game and we finally, you know, reach the final resting place. You know, the tech is there for said apprentice or attaché to put together the last pieces to essentially, you know, build their own suit and get a last infusion of Chozo DNA like Samus had to give that performance boost and tech compatibility, and lays Samus to rest there, and then takes off out of the place, and we've got a whole new character to follow. So
yeah, I like this idea a
there's
lot.
a Dread theory. Samus doesn't make it out of Dread, and instead, you know, there's one decent Chozo left on ZDR, and essentially, you know, picks up after Samus and takes off. And future games are following you know, the player playing as a Chozo, a new character for the series, taking on the mantle. I mean, we'll know in a couple of weeks. It's probably not that, but, you know, wild speculation is what we're about.
Yeah. But I do like this idea of having, like, co-op and having the idea of having like two different characters that you could, like with two different kind of like styles of gameplay, but they have roughly the same power level basically. So yeah, no, I like this. It almost makes me think there was a game called Tale of Two Brothers, I think it was called.
Yeah, Brothers.
Yeah. No, Brothers, Tale of Two Sons. That was the
That's
one.
it.
Yes, where it was like single player co-op, where like each analog stick controlled a brother, and
Yep, I remember this.
Yeah, and like you could control them, each one separately, and it was kind of wonky, but it worked. And it went through a kind of a interesting story like that. So
I'm also thinking too, there was just in terms of not looking at this as a side scroll, but as a like a top-down isometric, there was a game on the Game Boy Advance and original DS that was a top-down isometric Metroidvania that was a lot of fun too. It was called Scourge Hive.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before.
Had kind of Metroid Fusion feel a little bit to it, but that was a good one and a lot of fun. I should go back and replay that actually. So
but like the idea of having like the two characters, I'm just trying to think of like how you would control the two characters if you're doing single player.
Part of me thinks one's just AI controlled auto support.
That's true. That's true.
That's not that uncommon. I mean, we've done it with all kinds of stuff like Army of Two and everything else under the sun, really. So
it would just be easier if it was, like if you had multiple people. Yeah, that's true.
I wouldn't even say easier, but it would probably solidly be more fun.
Yeah,
Possibly a toggle between the two, so that way, you can have primary control over which one you might need more at the moment.
Yeah.
Given that abilities and attributes are varying between the two. So I think that'd be a good way to go around puzzle solving some of it.
Unless you did it story based, similar to how they did the new God of War, how your secondary character was almost more of a tool than an actual character.
Yeah. That's not a bad way to do it either.
Yeah.
So, right. So what kind of music plays in your head for this?
Ooh. I'm thinking very atmospheric choirs, Chozo choirs for this game. Going back to like the Supergiant games style, they've always done very solid music, and a lot of their stuff is like ballads and that kind of thing. I think that'd be really interesting if at the very end they sing a ballad about Samus's accomplishments. I think that'd be cool.
I don't know. I mean, I got two of Supergiant's games playing in my head, and I don't remember ballads in them because I'm thinking like Bastion was more Western feel.
Yeah.
With the music, and then Hades was kind of ancient Greek metal.
Have you started Hades yet?
Oh, I started it. I haven't gotten to do much with it.
I just recently 100%ed it.
Well, I know that Transistor and Pyre both have ballads in them, if I remember correctly. I know the Pyre definitely does. Transistor
and those are
is
two
sort
that
of,
I haven't done much with.
Yeah. So
I don't
that's
think I've even touched Pyre at all yet.
Yeah. That one I really want to play. It's not on the Switch, though. It's the only Supergiant game that's not on the Switch, which I'm really surprised.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. But I'm thinking I've got more kind of nature organic heavy music playing in my head. Maybe a little more synth sci-fi heavy to start, and the further we go, it gives way to that more kind of natural organic feel, and you know, as she's kind of fallen apart at her worst, you know, it starts to get a little more discordant to fit with it.
What if the music is directly tied with how her suit is falling apart? Like it starts out, you know, there's more of the music, and then as it progresses, it gets less and quieter.
More stark.
Until, like, and I almost think, like, at the end, you really actually do get this ballad of the Chozo people praising her accomplishments and things as she's going into this, the Chozo graveyard we were talking about.
Yeah.
But, like, there's been a consistent drop-off throughout the entirety of the game of it very obviously just getting more and more minimalistic.
Yeah, kind of layers peeling away real subtly. I get behind that.
Or except in situations maybe where it does focus on the apprentice-style character, where the music kind of crescendos a little bit more and more with that character.
Yeah, almost like maybe like two different music styles.
Yeah.
Like or like two different music instruments maybe to like differentiate between them. Like I'm almost thinking like more like synths for Samus and more like, you know, like regular kind of like maybe like a guitar or something for the apprentice or something like that.
Theoretically, you could also do something like during each different phase of the game, as her suit is falling apart, you're hearing like broken renditions of music from past games. You know, like the theme that plays when you're fighting like Mother Brain of Super Metroid. Just imagine a kind of damaged version of that playing while just various things are going on.
Or maybe just like a much quieter.
Yeah, more subdued.
You know, yeah, I do like that. Yeah.
So, as we've been playing with this, I think, you know, this has to have something of a conclusive ending and a crux for, you know, what set it off all in the first place. And my brain goes to the idea that something found their resting grounds and was, you know, has been essentially desecrating their graveyard, and it tripped this beacon that Samus picked up and, you know, went to head there. And the final bout with whatever this awful thing is.
Not Ridley.
Yeah, definitely no. Ridley's got to be done. Damn it.
Crocomire.
Yeah.
I just want Crocomire to show back up. I don't even care where.
I really do too. I mean, who knows? Maybe in a couple weeks we'll see him, because obviously, you know, somebody else is making a return appearance for the first time in forever. So, but no, you know, we'll have maybe our apprentice, basically in the line of fire, and Samus steps in the way, takes the hit, and that's what puts her down, and she gets off the last shot and takes out the creature, and that's how we close this out essentially, or at least bring the gameplay portion to an end and wrap the story at the end of, you know, the protege.
I almost like the idea of Samus walking into this knowing full well what all this means. Like, she knows she's not walking out of this situation.
At least a gut feeling, perhaps.
Yeah. Like, almost like she's been avoiding this place because she knows what it really means in the end.
Getting like Matt Smith Trenzalore vibes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. No, I'm in full support of all of this, and so I think that brings us to the point where we put a bow on it and we figure out what the fuck it's called. So I've got an idea, but I want to hear from the group. What title would you put to this?
I'm almost thinking Metroid. So this is really silly, but I'm almost thinking Metroid Spirits Within, but I know that's a Final Fantasy game. So
Movie, actually.
oh yeah, that's true. That's a movie. So I feel like that would not work.
God, I remember seeing that in the theaters.
Yeah. I had another thought. I'm not sure. Mykell, what about you?
I don't really have anything specific, but something about passing the torch on.
Hmm.
I don't know. I've got nothing specific, like no specific phrase or anything, but something that relays that this is the story continuing in a new version.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
See, my brain goes to Metroid Decay.
Yeah, I do
Entropy.
like that.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
So,
I almost feel like as though like Metroid the final chapter and then at the very end there's like, as we see the apprentice flying away, there's the title screen and then you put a question mark at the very end. But I feel like that would be silly too. So but
Metroid Passage.
ooh, I like that one. I like that one a lot. That one I think is a good one.
That has a right feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
So
The
well, there we
last
go.
passage.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we have a name for this this sumbitch. So I think that's where we close this up for this week. We'll make the quick rounds here and say thank you to everybody that tuned in this week. Thank you to both Isabel and Mykell for joining me this week. And we'll catch y'all next time. See you next mission. Peace!
Bye.